the 7 on each, so it looks like he's wearing mittens or boxing gloves.
Mm-hmm.
And uh Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and today I'm joined by Amanda Knox and Christopher Robbins from the Labyrinths podcast. How are you guys doing? And you guys do a bunch of other stuff as well.
Yeah, we're doing great.
Yeah, we're doing well. And it's Christopher Robinson. I know
Robbins,
that everyone,
I'm sorry.
everyone wants to be like Christopher Robin.
Yeah.
It's very tempting. I get it.
So I heard you guys on your podcast that was kind of like replayed on Yang Speaks, and you're talking about D&D characters, which I got excited to hear about D&D out in the wilds as I did. So I reached out and said, "Hey, do you guys want to come on and talk about your D&D characters?" And you're like, "Sure." And it's also probably a very different topic than you usually get asked to speak about.
For sure.
Yes, yeah. If only people would want to talk to us about Weird Al and D&D, that would be a whole other world.
Oh, Weird Al! Now you're speaking my co-host on the normal show's language. That's like his thing. For the longest time, I don't think he actually listened to any real music, just like Weird Al.
Yeah,
Weird Al is real music.
Weird Al is real.
You guys are musicians too, right?
I mean, I play guitar. Okay, so I dabble in guitar and piano, and I did do I signed up for advanced choir when I was in high school. So I did lots of musicals, that kind of thing. Chris is not a singer.
As a rapper.
Yes. And his claim to fame is at one point in his rap career back in the old days of Seattle, Macklemore opened for him.
So somebody says.
Yeah. So somebody says. Before we knew.
So it was written. So it has been. So
I did some D&D raps back in the day, actually.
Oh my God! Do you remember any of your D&D raps? You had a bunch of nerdy raps. You had Mega Man raps.
This was back in the.
Were you into the nerdcore scene?
Oh yeah, for sure. Back in the early days of MC Front a lot, before when he was just releasing songs on Song Fight or whatever, this is all pre, PAX even, right? So there wasn't much of a scene except in weird little pockets of the internet,
That was going to be my next question. Was there a nerdcore scene then?
Yeah.
It's totally a thing now, though. So before we go any further, let's digress a little bit. If you guys want to introduce yourself and kind of like what you do and where people can find you, there will be links in the description as always.
Awesome. Well, I am Amanda Knox. This is my husband, Christopher Robinson. We are the writers, producers, and hosts of the Labyrinths podcast, which is all about the stories of people getting lost and found again, sort of derived from my experience. I've sort of building bridges between the kinds of crazy experience that I had going through a wrongful conviction while I was studying abroad and the crazy experiences that all of us have whenever we're navigating some sort of thing that happens in our life that we have no control over.
And so far, we've talked to Andrew Yang and Malcolm Gladwell and rock star Dave Navarro.
LeVar Burton.
A really fun episode with LeVar Burton where we kind of did the episode like a Star Trek parallel timelines episode. So we kept on swapping timelines in the midst of this podcast interview. And in one timeline, he became a priest. And in another timeline, he became a politician.
Meanwhile, in those various timelines, I'm either in prison or not in prison.
We talked to Tim Urban of waitbutwhy.com, who does really fascinating illustrated articles about things like the Fermi paradox or artificial intelligence, and some really controversial episodes. We did one with Yasmin Mohammed, who escaped an arranged marriage to an Al-Qaeda operative and has now become a feminist and atheist advocate in the Muslim world, advocating against things like the hijab, which she sees as a sort of oppressive tool of the Muslim patriarchy. And we talked with the parents of a young boy who was caught up in a police sex sting sex sting.
Yeah, not sexting, sex sting.
Yeah, and
Those are
just
two different things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very.
looked at how that family has been kind of, destroyed in a way by what this police operation has done, and trying to tread that line of, not trying to absolve any moral responsibility for, a law that may have been broken, but looking at how the criminal justice system affects families
Yeah.
in particular. And a lot of the other work we do aside from Labyrinths is criminal justice
Yeah.
reform focused. For a place called crimestory.com, we've been doing a regular series of interviews during the pandemic, looking at how it's affecting, our incarcerated population, things like that.
Yeah. So a lot of our work tends to be very, very serious, talking about people's worst experiences, and doing so from a very compassionate lens. And so when we want to escape and relieve ourselves of our sort of criminal justice heavy duty burden, we have our Weird Al at the end of the day, and then our D&D on the weekends.
So does any of that like heavier stuff bleed into your D&D games, or is it really like, you know what, I want a solid divide between these things. This is my escape.
I mean, that's kind of up to the DM, right? Like, he hasn't put me in jail yet.
I mean, I will say that I'm chaotic neutral, and I think you're chaotic good. What
I'm
are you?
chaotic good.
Which in real life, you're more of a lawful good type, I think.
Am I lawful good?
In real life? Yeah. No?
What's the difference? Okay, so what's in between chaotic and lawful?
Could be neutral good.
I feel like I'm neutral
Probably
good.
might be neutral good.
I have principles, but I don't follow the law for the sake of the law.
Well, and it's also how orderly and,
yeah, I may be
structured
lawful
are
good.
you?
Yeah, I look at the lawful part of the alignment as being more about order and structure than actual laws. Only because, like, depending where you go, the laws are different.
That's true. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm definitely lawful good.
In
then.
real life, I'm actually lawful neutral. I love spreadsheets, but I'm absolutely amoral.
I don't
ended
know.
up doing, yeah.
We were doing there was this thing going around called the D&D tag, and it's like you answer these questions, and one of the questions was like, what alignment do you think you are? And I'm like, I feel like I'm like really I feel like I swing between order and chaos a lot in my life, and how I structure things. I like structure and order, but then also I can be pretty impulsive, and especially when gaming. Like, I'm an instigator. I just want to make things happen.
All right, so I think you're solidly neutral then. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I decided for the tag that I did, because it was on someone else's YouTube channel. I decided I was firmly lawful chaotic. So I also don't think I'm particularly good or evil. So there's that.
Okay, so you very similar, neutral. You're true neutral.
Maybe. I used to love playing druids, and in the earlier editions, you had to be true neutral to be a druid.
Interesting.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you guys are playing 3.5, I believe, and I think in 3.5 you just have to be partially neutral.
I think that's right.
And I think she's playing it. We have a druid on our campaign, and I think she's playing it true neutral. Yeah. The only thing she cares about is whether or not the animals and plants are getting
certainly not neutral
over.
when it comes to that.
No, she's very, very non-neutral when it comes to that. Yeah. All the humans she could care less about.
Well,
honestly, it's annoying. It gets in the way because we're like, oh, we need to lure this giant spider.
Or we have zombies
just summon
attacking
a pig
us
or something, and it's like, no, we're not putting an animal in danger that way.
It's like we have zombies chasing us, and I'm like, we got to flamethrower these guys, and she's like, what about the crops?
Yeah. Oh, that's the best. I like the first 5th edition group I ran for. 2 of my players showed up, and they're like, we want to play goblins. And
interesting.
But they're like, but we want to base our goblins off of juggalos. and
Oh my god!
I didn't know what a juggalo was 7
And
years
so you're
ago.
like, sure.
I did the most terrible thing you can do. I Googled and I found out what juggalos were, and I went down this deep dark hole of humanity.
I mean, aren't they like? I imagine that would be actually a very, you know, not a very dangerous goblin, because honestly, they just want to do whippets.
Well, yeah, right. That's so like they were like the guy. So we called them the gobelos, and they were kind of they were entertainers because they were like clowns, and they were also like, you know, rangers, fighters, and rogues. You know, so they were also like the heavy hitters in the party, which was kind of funny. And they were just ridiculous the way they played them. And this is going to circle back to druids. So they were doing this scouting, and they're waiting for the rest of the party to show up, and they're scouting this like manor in the woods. And so they're bored. So they start capturing small woodland creatures to get them high and fling them over the wall. And then, so like I had planned this like evil druid encounter, and I'm like, I just needed a regular druid.
Did they end up turning into paladins by secret? Because
no, not at all.
Yeah, ICP did have that big reversal. They're Christian now, I believe.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh yeah, did you hear about that? Like,
I did not.
Their whole sort of like secret plan the entire time was to turn all the juggalos Christian.
They retconned their whole musical career.
Oh, that was their secret. That was their secret plan.
Yeah, and they said, "Oh, we were Christian all along." It was this, you know, all the juggalo stuff. The guy with the hatchet, you know, it wasn't
that was made up.
Like,
didn't they have like a beef with Eminem, and like somebody pistol whipped somebody else? And
oh dang, I did not hear about that.
Like way back in the day,
they were more harmless.
Eminem has a whole like really hard to listen to, like at least minute-long skit on one of his albums that is just the sounds of the ICP guys sucking Eminem's dick. or not Eminem, but the character Ken Kniff that Eminem plays.
Yeah.
And you're just listening to
a
it.
Whole minute?
It's a minute. It's at least a minute long. It's hard to listen to.
That's really committing to a bit there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So you clearly know more details than I do. So I've learned too much. Go back.
Your gobelos sound way better.
Yeah. So they were just pure chaos in the game and a lot of fun. So what D&D characters are you guys currently playing?
So let me just whip out my character sheet. My name is Irid Ruberai. I am a rogue elf, kind of young for an elf. I'm only like 114 or something. But I'm basically, it's turning out to be that I'm like a puzzling Legolas type character. I'm the one who in the party who is really good at like flipping around and doing acrobatics and just like climbing up walls and, you know, sharpshooting. I'm the only one in our party who doesn't do magic. But I'm also the one who's like really good at opening locks and solving riddles and code breaking and that kind of thing. So.
And, you know, our DM, my brother Kyle, has been finding plans online to 3D print these little puzzle cipher boxes.
Yeah.
And so like we'll have a session and we'll meet somebody or find something in a tomb, and then he'll pull out this actual physical thing and be like, and this is what you find.
And then he hands it to me and I'm like, ooh, it's like a Rubik's Cube. Basically, he's just giving me a whole bunch of random
and it has
Rubik's
some
cubes.
message hidden inside it, and you got to figure out how to unlock it. And the first few times she was just like, chick, 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 solved it.
And he was like, go! I was planning for you to work on that for like the whole time.
But now we've had this little runic cipher box that has
God.
A series of runes on it that we have not been able to open for months now. We've just been lugging it out, and we have to wait until full moons arrive in the game,
so that
he can pull out the black light and show us if it has any hidden markings on it.
It's rough too,
Yeah.
because like I think he learned his lesson that if you give me enough time to tinker with something, I'll figure it out. So if like I have all the information in front of me, whether it's a code or whether it's a puzzle box, I'll figure it out pretty quickly. But like he's sort of not given me enough information in order to tinker with this box. And he made it so that if I try force tinkering it, I get psychic damage every time I try. So I'm like, disincentivized from tinkering, and I have to instead go around and try to figure out where in the world I'm going to find clues about what the code could be.
Yeah.
So that's still an ongoing struggle.
So a tip for DMs out there, psychic damage. Slow them down.
My character is a gnome illusionist named Fiznik. And I have slowly started to realize that reality itself is an illusion.
Yeah, his philosophy is super interesting as an illusionist.
So all magic is really just a subset of illusion as far as I'm concerned. And illusion is just the art of manipulating reality, because reality itself is just an illusion cast by the gods. And so my sort of quest as a character is to see the true nature of reality. And I've been, devising spells, and I'm working on a wondrous item that's going to help me see through to the true nature of reality, which is this reality where Amanda and Chris are controlling these characters. And so I've actually, in the game, I've had visions. I have my familiar is a psychedelic toad.
Yeah.
So I
was going to say, don't forget your psychedelic toad.
I occasionally lick my toad.
Real quick, right? Because you mentioned the toad and licking the toad. It was just on. I saw it. I was listening to something, and there's a problem that teenagers are capturing too many toads, and they're going to go extinct because all the kids get high off the toads.
Man.
We have to have more respect for the toad. He just licks his personal toad. So.
Yeah, we devised a system where like there's percentile dice, and sometimes I just end up color spraying myself, and sometimes I have a cryptic vision, and sometimes I get the effects of like an augury spell. But it has allowed me over the course of the campaign to glimpse the true reality. And so I know a few things. Like I know that Irid's real name is Amanda.
And he's occasionally called Irid that, and she's like, what are you talking about?
And I know that there's a number that represents my intelligence. And I know that there's a paper somewhere that tells all the facts of my existence. And it's like, as a character, I'm trying to piece those things together because it doesn't quite make sense. I basically have glimpses of the fact that we're D&D characters.
Meanwhile, the rest of the party is like, man, you got to quit licking your toad.
I was just thinking, I'm glad that the Goblos didn't know about psychedelic toads.
Yeah. The campaign would have been over.
Yeah, we would have gotten nowhere. Well, one of the things I did introduce was in an Underdark city, there's this tavern run by Myconids, and they have different concoctions for their drinks that they can add their spores to give different effects.
Dope.
Cool.
Yeah.
Dope.
So they did actually like recruit some of the Myconids to come home with them. They were also building a dungeon in a basement to a building they owned as well, for adventurers in the future. No real end, just so like adventurers can go someplace to adventure in the future. They're like, well, we do this thing, so let's make it, and we want to do the other side of it, I guess.
Cool.
I don't really know why the players felt the need to do that, but they did.
Well, on our, I get it. I mean, it's Minecrafting, right? It's like you want to do world building and not just playing the world. The DM shouldn't have all the fun with that.
Yeah, very meta. They inherited an estate because they would perform at the local taverns, and they did garner a patron that would show up. This old woman that had lost her husband and her children and her sons to adventuring.
Oh.
And she was a little bit on the crazy side, and she treated them like her missing sons.
No. That's cute.
And would bake them pot brownies. So,
there you go.
For some reason, drugs appear in a lot of my D&D games. I don't know why. I'm not the one to generally introduce them. It's always the players.
Okay, all right.
I think
Blame
this
the
is
players.
the first time I've
Yeah.
played a D&D campaign that
With
involved
psychedelics?
any kind of drugs as a prominent feature.
Hmm.
Yeah.
This is my first actual real campaign, actually. I did not grow up playing D&D. This is a thing that I've come into because of my relationship with Chris, whereas you've been D&Ding
Yeah,
since
I've been playing D&D since like 3rd grade or so.
Since before it was cool.
Yeah, I remember being out on the playground during recess with our D&D, with our 2nd edition books. And other kids would walk up holding a ball and sort of, walk up and be like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
We're sitting there rolling our dice. And I don't know. Dice were always more fun than a ball.
Oh man, balls are great though. I was one of those kids playing with balls.
Yeah, and I played on and off. I played a lot up through high school, and then post college, life got busier in a variety of ways, and so it's been kind of intermittent, various things, various role playing things, sometimes D&D, sometimes other things. But the pandemic has, for some reason, it's not like I have more time, but I think it forced us to, if we wanted to have social time, like Zoom cocktail hour is just, I can't do it.
Yeah.
But we started at the beginning. My brother was like, "Let's do D&D over Zoom." And it was a good excuse to just hang out when we were feeling kind of cooped up and alone. So
Yeah.
we started up this campaign, and then eventually we quarantined to the point where we had sort of separate bubbles that we felt comfortable mixing. And that was kind of our only social mixing that we did.
Yeah.
Is we would go to their house or they would come to our house every weekend.
And we just would not leave the house otherwise. Yeah.
And now we've been playing the whole pandemic, this campaign, and we're about 9th level. I think we're about to level up to 10.
Are we really? He said we're
Yeah.
going to level up?
Yeah.
Jeez, we're
So
super
is
close.
it, you think it's going to stick
Yeah.
after the pandemic ends?
I've also never had a campaign that I usually have died or, I mean, a lot of my D&D friends from back in the day, my buddy Nick was often a DM, very strict, very like he would build a world and then he would stick to the principles of that world in such a hardcore way that it would be like, well, you left those bodies by the roadside and now the local police have caught up to you while you're in the tavern and you're being arrested and now you're tried and you're going to be executed. It's like, God damn it, this isn't fun. Well, you have to try to escape from jail. And then we try and then we rolled poorly and then we all died in attempting to escape from prison.
Yeah, your brother's way more accommodating.
Yeah, so
like I've been speared by giant worms and somehow I'm still here.
well, I saved you.
You did save me,
Yeah.
actually. I was like 1 point away from being a goner.
She was -9 hit points.
Yeah. It was bad.
So,
and it was a really good moment too, because I got to like, basically he told me I get speared by this thing and I'm just like,
There's a lot of older gamers coming back to the hobby, and also people just getting started later and jumping in and playing. I mean, for us, like that's always been like, the two favorite comments are like new players that are just getting started, but then also like people that have been like, I haven't played in 20 years, I haven't played in 10 years.
Yeah.
And then then they think about it again, and I see me and Ted and two old guys talking about D&D still. And there's been a bit of a renaissance, and plus things like Critical Role obviously has elevated the popularity as well.
Yeah.
The idea of 30,000 people watching people play D&D live is just like insane.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't gotten on that train yet. I haven't like watched a D&D game yet. But I'm trying to imagine like how good you'd have to be at playing D&D to make it actually interesting. Because usually when we're playing, it's a little slow. Like,
I mean, it depends on the adventure, but yeah.
Yeah, me personally, I'm not really a fan of watching stream games, even though I'm on a bunch of them and I've run a bunch of them. But there's tons of people that love it, and like even like when we first started doing this like 7 years ago, I were like, I guess we should show people that we really play the game too. and we would just like film our games, and it was so terrible because we'd like have a camera on the far end of the table, and it's this like long view, and our gaming table is a pool table that's had covers made to put over top of it to use.
Oh,
So
cool.
Yeah.
so making it also very wide, so that makes getting a tight
Yeah.
shot hard. And then like we'd have like one microphone, and it was just terrible to watch and listen to. But people would watch a bunch of them. I think the very first one we did has like 150,000 views on it,
Weird.
and
That's so cool.
it is. But I'm also like, this is also terrible compared to like Critical Role's production is really really good. And there's a bunch of other outfits out there that do it as well that have really great production values. Matter of fact, we got to a certain point where we're like, there's a lot of people doing this really well. Let's just have our home games be our home games and not subject our friends to the internet anymore.
Yeah.
I'm imagining a world in which like you can have the same kind of quality of production as the NFL does when they're playing.
Oh,
games.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
have like zooming cameras.
Yeah.
Well, close shot of his shock at finding dragon blood all over.
Yeah, I think Critical Role to a certain extent does. Like, we had gone out to LA to be on GM tips. So Team Phoenix was hosting it. So, but it was at the same place that Critical Role was filming at the time. So we like got to see their set and everything. And it is a for real set. It's like they've got, when you see it, there's the table, and then they've got like 15 microphones all hanging from it to capture the sound. And then,
Wow.
they got like, it was weird for us because, when we shoot videos, it's just me and Ted turning on the camera and doing our thing. We go there and there's like a whole crew, and it was very weird. And it took me a moment to like kind of like get over like all the people out there. I don't know if you remember the red monster from Bugs Bunny, but I definitely had one of those moments.
Cool. Yeah, Kyle's so good at making the experience feel immersive.
Yeah.
Because first of all, he's just a theater guy. Like in his regular life, he is performing in Renaissance fairs and things like that.
Him and his wife Layla and their friend Jordan, who are also in our campaign. They are in this troupe called the Seattle Knights, and in the pre-pandemic days, they would, joust. They have horses, and they would joust and sword fight and things at Renaissance fairs.
Yeah.
So he's very used to like being up in front of people and being performative. So he brings that to his DMing, and he's great at slipping into NPCs whenever we meet somebody. He totally just adopts the craggly old voice of this crone that we're talking to, on the side of the road, or bartender, etc. And he also has gotten really, this is something I've never done before with D&D. He's gotten into sound effects and atmospheric music.
Yeah.
And he's got it queued up on his laptop with a speaker under the table, so that like, all of a sudden somebody teleports in and we hear this,
Yeah.
he plays a little noise, and then
we're like walking in the woods, and then he starts putting on creepy, eerie music, and we're like, uh-oh.
You're grabbing the D20 to roll initiative.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is at least like 2 or 3, if not more, companies, and that's all they do is create sound effects for gaming and mood music.
Yeah,
So,
he's probably gotten
it really,
on that train.
it does a lot just to be like, you're in the Halfling Tavern, and it's like you hear the sounds of it. It does. It's a very easy, simple way to like immerse you in that environment immediately, and kind of
then be like, oh yeah, of
force you
course
to stay in
there's a
character more.
halfling lady dancing on the table over there. Of course
Yeah.
there is.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when we used to put the Anvil of Crom on before a fight would break out every time. When we used to play in the early days. Once we went to streaming and recording our stuff, music was a no-no for sure. But I remember doing that, and I think later we evolved to the Gladiator soundtrack. But that is as far as we've delved into adding music to it. And also back then it was a lot harder too. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how he keeps track of everything.
Well,
He has
sometimes
everything
it is
queued
like Kyle, can you turn off this battle music because we're now, having a quiet conversation with the leader of the Assassins Guild.
Oops.
It doesn't seem quite right.
It becomes the anti-mood music.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're like, oh, we really need to chill out right now.
Yeah. So we had talked before. You guys are experimenting with some other games as well, correct?
Yeah, we're
Yes.
currently a few sessions into a Monster of the Week game. I think we did our sort of setup session and we did our first adventure.
The setup session was
Yeah.
actually surprisingly fun because I don't know if you've ever played Monster of the Week, but you have like all the players sort of have to at the very beginning in the setup have connections to each other. And so like you learn a ton of backstory just in the process of being like, oh, well, I guess you're my cousin's son, I guess. And so now we have that relationship, and that that set up some really interesting dynamics that is very different than here's 5 people, they're in a tavern, and now you're in a campaign together.
So she did one of it's interesting to me watching you like role play because
Why?
so like I'm sure you know about this phenomenon, but like whenever you get a party together, and that's what the opening session of this Monster of the Week rulebook is all about, is like trying to help you finesse the why are we all together and going on adventures, and if you don't handle that question well at the beginning of a campaign, you have a bunch of characters who don't want to go along the same road, or their objectives are different, or they don't trust each other, and things can quickly devolve. And on the other hand, you can just hand wave that and say, oh, we're all long time friends, and but that also feels a little easy and fake, and everyone wants to have their own interesting backstory they've come up with. But then you have to handle that question of like, well, why are we together and going on this journey together?
Yeah.
And you in this Monster of the Week game, she decided to make a character that was very much not interested in working with any of the other people. And so
I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Are you playing the flake?
I'm playing the flake.
Yeah.
So like he's, trying to trick me. He's the spooky, and like I don't trust him at all. I've seen
she's just
him
like, I'm leaving, going, we're like, okay, like, this is our little out of game sign. I'm like, all right, like can we find a way for your character to want to be a part of this?
Oh no, Amanda's the
Meanwhile,
problem player.
I don't know.
She tried to leave in the opening session, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna roll my I forget what that spooky power is, but something where like an item that belongs to someone else, they lose it and I find it. And I did that power, and the keeper was like, well, you get her car keys. She drops her car keys on the way out.
I had a whole plan though in walking away, where my plan in walking away was I was going to go and check in with all of like my internet conspiracy theorist friends, and I was going to do background checks on all of you guys, and then I was going to come in. Like I was planning on you guys going and tackling the monster, and then me coming in and saving the day later.
Well,
so I was gonna do a delayed
I
entrance
see.
into the party, but you just made me lose my car keys, and I was like, damn it.
Well, Andy had a smartphone, and you could check your forums that way.
I forgot about that. So
it is definitely a much different game than D&D. And to your point, Christopher, like I remember agonizing as a GM, like how to get the players together and how to like tie everyone together. And then like we started doing the Nerdarchy thing after I'd already been playing the game for over 20 years. And I heard someone go, you don't have to do that. Just make the players do it. I was like, what? It's like, it was so huge. Like, and Session Zero is kind of good for that as well, where you just, instead of like having all these characters that don't make sense to be together, be like, no, you guys all figure it out and tell me why you're working together. And why you're together. It just takes so much off your plate. We are actually getting ready to play a Monster of the Week game. I'm getting ready to run. And my wife is also looking at the flake. But she's like, I don't like the name of it. It's mean. I'm like, well, it's just the name. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about it. I thought it would be fun to be a weird conspiracy theorist person.
Do you have a board with string?
I don't like my character probably would have something like that. She's like infiltrated the local like paranormal studies, secret thing because her father disappeared when she was 16, and so she's been secretly like trying to get documents, thinking the CIA might have something to do with it. And she's got some files somewhere. I don't know if she would have them out in the open,
Yeah.
because she definitely tries to maintain this like, I'm a secretary, very nondescript, you would always look past me in the cafeteria kind of attitude, but she carries like a big Glock in her purse.
Oh, so you're kind of like the hide in plain sight kind of flake.
Yes.
Like, because in the movies are always like portrayed as, or in media portrayed as people that are like shut-ins. They lock themselves away. They don't go outside.
Yeah, she's hiding in plain sight so that she can get access to documents,
Yeah.
as like the secretary. But you guys found me out real quickly.
Well, the director of the paranormal research, unit that have been conscripted into, presented us all with some files when we were gathered in this room, and was like, actually, your father. It was like you got a file that was like a bunch of redacted stuff about your father,
Yeah.
and I got a file like, so my character, when I was like 6, I had a twin brother, and I was climbing a tree.
You both were
And
climbing
we're
a
both
tree.
climbing a tree. And at some point, like, I slipped, and then my brother tried to reach for me, and he slipped, and we were both kind of dangling from this high tree. And I had this moment where I was like, don't let it be me. Let me be safe, And then my brother slipped and fell and broke his neck and died. And I fell also and broke my ankle and have walked with a cane ever since.
That's why he's
But
called Kane.
but yeah. But that was like my dark bargain, where like some shadowy spirit, made it so that it wasn't me that day. And so I think, my brother's dead, of course. And then I get a file that's a bunch of stuff about my brother that's also redacted. And it's like, wait a minute, you telling me my brother might be alive? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so for me, that was enough to be like, all right, director,
I'm in.
I'm
Yeah.
in. And she was like, I don't trust the validity of this redacted file. I need to do my own research.
Yeah.
So hear
I'm
me
out
out.
of here.
Hear me out. Christopher's character's named Kane because of
Yes.
the cane. But
Yes.
I think maybe it's the brother thing, and it's a Cain and Abel thing.
Ooh, did you even think of that?
No.
You can totally play it off. It's a gimme.
Yeah.
There you go.
I totally thought of that.
The whole time. Yeah, so that game is a lot more rules light and more open ended. How do you like that compared to the D&D game you're playing?
I mean, so again, like I don't have a ton of experience with either of them, and my experience has mostly been mediated through who I'm playing with.
Yeah.
And so I'm playing, we're playing D&D with your brother and your brother's wife and their best friend, who I'm really close with. We spend a lot of time with them anyway. I know them a lot better. We're playing Monster of the Week with your friends, who, I mean, I guess they're my friends, but they're your friends. And they basically roped me in because they were like, we need a girl. We need a girl to like play with us. So Amanda, will you play with us? And I don't know, it's definitely different vibes.
Yeah, I mean,
because your brother will role play.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's like Monster of the Week is more improv in a lot of ways because
Yeah.
you're not sitting there dice rolling.
Mm-hmm.
But also, this crew of people we're playing with are not as deeply practiced at like living in character as, say, my brother is.
Yeah.
And so there's with D&D, there's both a lot more dice rolling and flipping through rule books and like, well, wait a minute, is that a 5-foot square? And you can step. Yeah, okay. Well, hold on a minute. Can I cast this spell non-verbally? Because, like there's a lot of that, but then there's also like more in-depth role play at times, just because I think we're playing with more experienced role players.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you enjoy the rule booky, dice rolly aspect of it all?
I mean, it definitely gives me a better sense of what options are available to me. But because I'm still sort of figuring out the improv aspect of Monsters of the Week. Like, we basically decided to split up into two teams this last time. Me to go, me and what's his face, the professional,
Yeah.
to go and interview this one person. You guys are gonna go interview this other person, and we still haven't like fought the monster yet. So I'm interested to see what fighting the monster is going to look like.
I mean, yeah, you can, on the scale of like what a battle looks like, you can have minis and a grid, and you can be very precise about, oh, well, you've got partial cover because there's a tree in front of you, and or there's an intermediate phase where sometimes we'll just get out the whiteboard and be like, you're here, he's there, and you kind of fudge the distances, and am
mhm.
I close enough to, yeah, sure, you're close enough. No, I think you're a little further away.
Yeah.
And then there's like, I think Monster of the Week is going to be a lot looser than that, even, where we don't have a whiteboard. We're not drawing the layout of the positions of characters in a battle,
Right.
and you're just kind of turn-based, sort of talking through
Trying
what you
stuff.
do,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, I think it's going to be an interesting challenge to get a grip, all of us together, on what the field of play
Yeah.
looks like. Because with D&D, like, it was intimidating to me at first with all of like the 5 foot square, and like, okay, you get an extra point on your roll if you're 30 feet away because you have like, sharpshooter or whatever. And for this one, I'm sort of loosely going with it and finding that I get to put more of my
Mm.
theatricalness into the group, because I've I've sort of learned that from your brother. Um, but I'm interested to know how this is going to work out once the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, Monster of the Week is far less tactical, and also like the keeper doesn't roll any dice, so
right.
Right.
which is also weird for me. Like, I've only played Monster of the Week as a player a few times. This will be my first time running it. Cipher System is another game that is where the GM doesn't roll, and I always find those a little odd just from coming from the D&D background, because they're used to kind of rolling off against the players, and now it's a little freeing too because you have plausible deniability even if you're not doing any of the die rolling. It's
Right.
all in them.
Right,
Hmm.
right. Yeah, he decides,
They have
we
different, and they create different environments and different styles of play. I mean, like, I've played a bit of Diceless too, where it's just like you create characters that have, three skills and one detriment or something like that, right?
mm,
And you sort of just make it up. Oh, my flaw is that I'm clumsy.
mhm.
And then it's really up. There's a lot of just improv interpretation of how the game master plays that, and you have to do a lot of like, oh, I pick up a rock in the alleyway. And then you're sort of creating the world as you do that. And the game master has to be like, no, sorry, there's no rocks there, but you do find a bottle. You're like,
Mhm.
okay, but you're clumsy, you drop it, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Now
well,
you just
good thing
have broken glass.
yeah.
I guess like the point system and the sheet does set up like a clear expectation, though, that like if I get impaled by a giant worm, like, am I gonna die or am I not gonna die?
Yeah.
And I think that when I don't have numbers in front of me, it's more wishy-washy, and so it makes it so that I don't quite know what the consequences of my actions are going to
Mm.
be necessarily. That said, I can't say that at any given point when I'm entering into a battle in D&D that I know how many hit points I'm going to lose based
Right.
upon just looking at the guy who's going to cast a spell on me. So,
I've been trying to sort of nudge her to depend on her bow less, because it's easy for her as the expert archer to, and my character's been enabling her by giving her, magical upgrades to arrows when I
which you
can.
would, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you?
But, I also want her to like think of that as just one of the tools in her toolbox. And so, like, actually, you did a really great job this last or two adventures ago. We were in this forest and we got abducted by these sort of dark elves that turned out had been corrupted into spiders long ago. And we all got cocooned, and we all had to, my brother like took us into a separate room, and he's like, okay, you're wrapped up in this cocoon. Like, what do you do? and we
You
all
can't
had
see,
yeah,
you
we all
can't
had to
move.
figure out individually how to like escape our cocoons. And once we did, we were trying to get out of this webby, cavernous thing in the treetops in these like 300-foot tall like redwood trees. And I created a dimension door to get us to the top of the canopy, like out of this, up into the sunlight. But meanwhile, like initiative order, all of the thousands of spiders got attracted due to some noise we'd made opening up one of the cocoons, and so we're being flooded with just hundreds of spiders, and little cat-sized spiders up to like cow,
Or
and
he said one was as big as a
big,
rhino.
rhino-sized spiders,
Yeah.
right? And so she's at first, plucking arrows, and then realizes
Like,
that's
nope.
not going to cut it.
There's more
Just gonna
spiders than I
run.
have arrows.
Yes.
So what you had what was it? A potion of
I had a potion of
a fire breath or something
yeah,
like
it was
that?
a potion of fire breath. Yeah.
Yeah, she like at one point after I had this, the way we kind of altered the dimension door spell, so it's kind of more like the portals in the game Portal. So
Okay, yeah.
as long as I'm concentrating, I can like have one portal open and have the other portal open and like sort of actively maintain the link, as long as I keep passing concentration checks. And so I'm like, got this portal open. I'm like, get through it, everyone, get through it. And she just swallows this thing and then just runs forward, breathing flame.
And then launch myself. And you got some fire damage, I think. Who was it
Yeah,
who got fire
I
damage?
got fire damage.
So I was
yeah.
like, screw it. Sorry, guys.
And then I aired on my portal, and it was like 100 feet above the top of the canopy. So she emerges in midair,
And I'm like,
and thankfully she has this immovable rod that she just clicks into place in the air
Yeah.
and swings from that.
yeah, but I almost
Yeah.
dislocated my shoulder
Yeah.
doing it.
Sounds like your
think I
brother's a fun GM.
Yeah, he's great. He's willing to fudge things to make it work. And when we suggest sort of outrageous things that don't really make sense in the 5 square thing, like
Yeah.
I'm tumbling through the air. Like, what am I gonna do?
I mean, we play pretty loose in some capacities. He's also given us plot points. So I think like once per adventure, we all have a plot point that we can use to like shape the plot. And it's similar to like an action point. And he'll be like, well, sorry, you lose unless you want to use your plot point. Do you really want this one particular action you wanted to happen? Like, you can make it happen. And that has been really nice to use those. And I think it's become this collaborative thing where he sort of ceded some of the GM responsibilities to us. And one of those ways is that he drew a very loose map at some point early on. It was kind of a crappy little oval with some dots for cities. And we decided over the last couple of weeks to draw a dope map.
Yeah.
And we spent like 2 weeks perfecting this map and adding all kinds of features to the landscape and putting in a whole bunch of things. And he just sort of gave us the latitude to sort of invent the world. And now he has a lot of plot hooks that he can be like, oh crap, what's this crazy waterfall over here? Or what's this? You've got these crystal caverns over past the volcano. Like, maybe there's an adventure that happens down there.
Yeah.
So it's been a collaborative. We gave him all the tools to like plot the next adventure, and it's giving him all kinds of ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that sort of arose from the fact that he was like, well, my sword told me that I had to go somewhere called Forlorn Forest. And I was like, where is that? How
Yeah.
far away is that?
She's got
What
a
terrain do I have?
moon blade intelligent weapon that apparently comes from one of her ancestors, and it's been talking to her during the full moons.
Yeah, during the full moon, it talks to me, but also it's usually just led me into traps. And I'm like, I don't know if I trust my moon blade anymore.
yeah. That's why she's using the bow all the time. She's got trust
Yeah.
issues when it comes to swords.
It's true.
Yeah.
I have thought of that. Like, every time I've listened to the sword, we've been led into a spider trap.
Yeah.
Like,
So
Well, now we're on go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like your character is very busy during a full moon.
yes, during the full moon, I have to take out all my little gadgets and basically spend some time with him, like shining the black light over it, going like, okay, quick, what can I find out? And talk to the moon blade. And
Yeah.
usually I just get a scatter shot of random stuff that I have yet to be able to put
Yeah,
together.
we've incorporated some fun like real-time elements where, a round is 6 seconds. And so depending on what we want to do, if there's a spell or something that takes place in the course of a round, he'll like time me like and give me 6 seconds. So like I got a jar of wondrous paints that, you can paint something and then it becomes like a real object. But he'll like get out the stopwatch and he'll make me draw what I want to create in 6 seconds if
And
I'm
it's
if
always
I'm doing it in the midst of combat. And it's like I need to make a big glass jar, and he's like, okay, draw it in 6 seconds.
And
And
it's like,
how
"Wah."
crappy is it? Did you leave a gap that
It's like the worst game of Pictionary ever.
yeah. But like I have a spell that I made called Red Pill, I think,
Mm.
that lets me step into the true reality for a moment, and I can ask the DM any question I want, and he'll give me an answer. But I can only take back 3 words to my character. And then once I'm like back in character, it's like kind of a blur of where I was. But I've got these like 3 sort of totemic words that have something to do with the answer to my question. And he makes me do it all in 6 seconds. So he'll like write out the answer and then flip the page over and time me as I try and figure out which of the 3 words in this paragraph I want to like bring back with me. And it's very hard to like skim that paragraph and be like, oh God, Faye, water, whatever it is.
Mm.
And then now I pop back, my eyes roll back into my head and I'm like, okay, well, gosh, it's something to do with elves and water. God damn it.
Speaking of,
yeah.
you haven't shared that with the company.
Yeah. Well,
Why are you keeping that to yourself?
This is none of your goddamn business.
yeah, they don't fully trust me because being
Because you lick a toad often.
He
well,
licks toads often. He also started, like, we found this evil magic book, and because he's like, ooh, magic, I want to learn more magic, he started reading this evil magic book, and it turned him evil for a second, so we basically had to,
Yeah.
like, grab him and
we found
exorcise
this like
him. And
this first age artifact that is called the Book of Dagna, and it's this powerful tome about this old deity. And my thirst for knowledge was such that I just wanted to read this thing, even just to understand it. Also, I'm
Yeah.
kind of morally neutral, so I didn't care. But it started turning me kind of evil, and they're like, get that book away from him, and they're sort of forcefully carrying me to a priest to try and exorcise the little spirit. And I'm like, give me the book, give me the book.
Dagna,
like,
is that from the Cthulhu mythos?
It might
maybe
be. I don't know.
Sounds
Kyle
familiar.
just dropped that on us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, it's a little great old one between friends and friendly fire when you're breathing fire on your fellow companions as well.
indeed. Yeah, that was.
And now
I was just scared.
they keep that book away from me. We're still trying to figure out how to destroy it, and we need to get another. We either need to get like a dragon shard or another first age artifact of equal or greater power in order to destroy this evil book. And so the druid is keeping it in this extra dimensional little sealed pocket, like a special bag of holding that is also protected from scrying. And she won't let me near it because she knows that I'm really curious about it.
Yeah.
I
We
think-
knew what happened last time.
I think the druid is probably secretly being corrupted now.
Uh-oh.
And you're going to
We
have
should
to
keep an
deal
eye
with
on her.
the druid's army of chipmunks. Evil
I mean,
chipmunks.
I think that she is actually, I think the reason why we felt it was safe for her is because Dagna's all about like killing things and like sacrificing animals and stuff. So she's like super mad about it and is like really wants to destroy it. Because it has involved like the magic involves like sacrificing animals. And so she's very anti-Dagna.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had to align our motives through like we have this whole Dagna quest and eradicating the cult of Dagna, but like we have very different reasons for wanting to do so. Like I don't care about the animals at all. I want to collect some first age artifacts because I know that in order to build my wondrous item that will let me see the true nature of reality, it's going to my research has told me it's going to require some first age artifacts, and I'll need to destroy them to harness the energies that they release in order to make my thing. So I'm sort of along the path with them to like, sure, let's destroy this Book of Dagna. That's fine.
Yeah.
But our druid really wants to destroy it for moral reasons.
Yeah.
That don't bother me at all. you
Right.
know?
Similar for me, just because I'm neutral good and it's an evil object. So I feel
Hoity
compelled.
toity druids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm a rogue somehow. I think I started out true neutral, but then like over the course of whatever was going on, our DM was like, "Oh, sorry, you changed alignment. Now you're good."
Yeah, well, she would do things that were a little bit selfless, and it's like, sorry, you're kind of tipping to the light here. You're
Yeah.
more good than you thought. You know?
Oh,
Oops.
so William has a kind of question observation. Chris looks like he restores old typewriters at work and drives an antique VW Beetle home. Does he? Well, you've got do you have a doctorate or master's in poetry?
I have 2 master's degrees in poetry.
If you put them together, does that make a doctorate? It seems like it should make something.
Yeah, it seems like it should. I spent too many years in grad school. I did one master's degree, and then I was like, what? I'm just supposed to go out in the world and be a poet now? Like, I didn't feel prepared to do anything. And so I just went back to grad school again.
Yeah.
And
But he's not doing typewriters. He's more nerdy than that. He was actually going to be a computer guy before he was like, I'm going to drop out of computering and do poetry.
Yeah, I was a computer engineering guy for a while, and that kind of fell apart when my Counter-Strike clan sort of took over my life, and I got sucked into competitive video gaming for a little bit. And then I dropped out of college and decided to retool and rethink what I wanted to do with my life. And then weirdly, I came back and ended up doing philosophy and creative writing. And that led me into poetry, which led me into novel writing. And it seems like it doesn't follow at all from my computer years. But as I was telling you that other time, being a DM and a player character for many years, that was my formative writing experience. So even though I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to be a writer, like I was actually secretly or sort of obliviously practicing that craft a lot, unbeknownst to myself. And it informed the way that I create novel characters now, and craft storylines. And in fact, on my last book, I made D&D character sheets for all the characters in the novel, and modified the sheet to be more useful for modern day non-magical setting.
I think my favorite one is like you had your favorite or my favorite little like spot instead of like armor and weapons, you had like catchphrases.
Well, I had like, what do they, what's their inventory? What do they have in their pockets at all times? Everyone has a different sort of what's in your pockets, but I also altered all the skills. So it's like, how are you at flirt? How are you at navigate bureaucracy? Like, do you know how to do the phone tree at Comcast? Like some people are really good at that.
Yeah.
And I figured out what all the skill points were for my characters and what their backstories were and what their alignments were. And it really, really helped shape the book because I had a really complete picture of who these characters were before ever writing page 1.
Right. And what sort of shenanigans they could get into in order to interact with each other and be on a campaign. So.
And whenever you're in the midst of writing a chapter, you look and say, what does this guy do here? Okay. Look back at the sheet. Oh, well, look at that. He's really crappy at flirtation. I think this is going to go poorly for him.
There's some really great authoring and world building tools out there. We work with a company called Campfire Technologies, and they kind of have like their system is basically for organizing that kind of stuff and keeping things in order. And then World Anvil is another one that's really good as well. And there's a lot of crossover between RPGs and writing novels in that regards, like kind of like you alluded to and pointed out. And also both of you, even in the podcasting stuff you do, you're storytellers. You tell stories and help other people tell their story. So, it just makes sense. So
yeah, we do that kind of constantly. Gosh, we never really get away from it, do we?
From storytelling?
Yeah, we never do. We go
why would you want to, though? It's such a great thing to do, right?
I mean, it's like we do that for our job and then we do that for our fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've also been playing Sherlock Consulting Detective a lot lately. I think we're on case number 8. Have you ever played this game?
I have
Thought we
not.
just solved case number 8.
You solved case number 8.
Yeah.
Is
You
it
just
a
have like
tabletop game?
you have a map of London, and you have a little directory of addresses of people who live in London, and then you have I think that's about it. And then
You have newspapers.
yeah, oh, you have a newspaper for the day, and then you have a booklet where you get a case, and like Holmes says, "Oh, I'm too busy for this. Why don't you handle it?" And then you basically have to just sit there and go, "Well, where do we want to go? Who do we want to talk to?"
Yeah.
I guess
Do
we
we go
could
to
go
the
to the
scene of the
crime scene, yeah.
crime? Yeah.
And so you flip to you're like, okay, well, that's at 22 Northwest. Like, flip through the book, and you turn to that page, and it says, "You arrive at the crime scene, and you speak with Inspector blah blah blah."
And there's a cigarette butt that
Yeah.
looks like it's from,
And I'm like, oh, maybe we should look in the directory. Maybe we'll go to the tobacconist and see if anyone recognizes this cigarette butt.
yeah, maybe it's
Yeah.
a
And so you're just kind of wandering around the city, figuring out where to go. And it's not so much, you're not really role playing characters, but you are living in that world, and you get really used to thinking of what is Holmes Victorian England
yeah.
like.
I liked reading from the thing in like a what would be my horrible Victorian English accent. But then everyone was like, we're really distracted. We just need to figure out what the clues are. Can you just read it like a normal person?
Why won't you just be normal?
Yeah.
That's no fun.
No, governor.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys talk in voices in your games?
We haven't been. I mean, I guess I do when we are interacting with non-player characters. Like, I have an ongoing thing with this elf in the criminal underworld, and it's kind of awkward because your brother really gets into her character, and then I'm like weirdly flirting with your brother in character.
Yeah.
She's kind of got the hots for this elf underworld lady, and she has a little like a stone of sending or something, and pulls it out, and it's like, "Hey there, girl."
Yeah, every time I talk to her, I have to like smooth talk her.
Yeah.
But I always feel a little bit awkward because it's your brother at the end of the line.
But he doesn't flinch. He is like in
Oh
character.
yeah, he is in
Yeah.
character 100%.
No, I agree. That stuff is very awkward. It's just, so much so that in most of our games we do not romance. But not only that, like early on in my more informative years of gaming, we were playing Top Secret, and my GM did introduce a romance scene, and it was a counter spy with knockout lipstick. So ever since then, it's like, nope, it is going to be a succubus, or there's going to be knockout lipstick involved. Nothing good can come of romance in RPGs.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. Yeah, I was traumatized at an early age. So. Where on the dial did your GM touch you? I don't know. Yeah, and also like romance scenes is me looking at Ted because he's usually the GM or I am. So it's just weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's hard for me to forget that it's your brother.
Yeah. But I mean, that's also like the fun thing about these games is we get to explore these other, aspects of ourselves or these made up people.
Sure.
And it's part of the game. So.
It also, like, I don't know, I've been getting more interested in psychedelics lately, and reading a lot about that world. And so it's kind of interesting to be playing a character who's doing that as well in a very different way.
Who's full hog psychedelic.
Yeah. and who has like gone down the like we're in a simulation rabbit hole basically for the D&D version of that, so I kind of feel like, and in some of the work, we're doing an episode about this in our new season too, about psychedelic journeys, and interviewing some people about that. So it's kind of like in work mode, we're thinking about that, and then in game mode, I'm like, what does my crazy little illusionist do with that?
And how soon can I lick my toad next?
Yeah.
Wait, you guys kind of get into that a little bit too during the Dave Navarro interview as well.
Yeah,
you discussed that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was over a year ago. So
yeah, he actually we need to get in touch with him again about that because he is he's done like, clinical guided journeys in very controlled settings. And I want to talk to him more about that and see if maybe
We can make a trip
we
to
can make it.
Oregon.
Yeah.
There's another creator, and they were talking about wanting to do a podcast or a live show where they would game, but they would do a different drug each time. They're also in Oregon, so where everything's just been decriminalized. So I'm like, okay, I can see that for like a handful of things, but after that, I don't recommend it, and especially I don't recommend doing it live. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might need
that's
the
a lot of
ability to edit.
pressure. It's not quite the set and setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And depending
Yeah.
on what monster you're fighting that week, it could be terrifying.
Yeah. And also, that definitely requires some adult supervision.
Yes. The cameraman's like, oh my God.
Why did I sign up for this? How did this happen? How did my life come to this? So we're just past the hour mark. I want to thank you guys for coming on again. This was the greatest interview that never happened before. But you guys were great sports in coming back and doing it. I really enjoyed talking with you. Final thoughts before we head out?
Just please check out our podcast. And we had a great time hanging out with you. And
Yeah, you can find Labyrinths wherever you find podcasts, or you can also find links to it through our social media. She's at Amanda Knox. I am at ManUnderBridge on Twitter.
and if you want to see pictures of my cats, you can follow me on Instagram at Amama Knox.
Yeah, it's mostly pictures of cats and me.
Yes, you.
If you want pictures
You're one
of
of my
her,
cats.
you got to go to my Instagram.
Yeah. So as always, those links will be in the description. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Thanks.
Bye.
And we are out.